This is Robert, and I'm just about to head out from home here, going to the local Ducati dealership. It's March 3rd, and they're having an open house in honor of the new V4. I'm riding my bike. It's a Honda VTR 1000, essentially a Ducati imitation. It's a dual overhead cam water-cooled V-twin. They were made from 98 to 2005, 2006, I believe. You get to see me getting ready. Now I have this budget Chinese camera. It's got fairly nice video, but one thing it does do is turn bright Italian red motorcycles into this orange color. Now, the colors was more accurate there as you saw it reflected on the car. Anyway, I'm riding out to the street here to start the bike up and let it warm up without hopefully disturbing the neighbors too much. Carbureted bike, got to remember the choke. This bike has two enormous, I think they're 48 millimeter carburetors on it that sit in the V between the cylinders on the bike. Basically, this bike was Honda's response to Ducati's predominance in superbike racing. In the mid-90s, they changed the rules to where 1000cc twins could compete against 750cc four-cylinders. And this gave Ducati a distinct advantage with their Desmo heads and race philosophy. So they started dominating racing. As a result, the Japanese responded to that by coming up with their own bikes as homologation specials. The most famous was the RC51. Also known as the SB1 and SB2 in various incarnations. But their spin-off was a mild-mannered, all-around, sporty bike using a water-cooled V-twin, which was called the Superhawk here in America, and the Firestorm in Europe. My bike is a first generation one. I found an excellent example of it. Only paid $2,900 for it, and it was in cherry mint condition. Had 25,000 miles on it, which is nothing for a Honda engine, especially a water-cooled one. Okay, so now we're warmed up and taking off. This is my neighborhood. I live north of Seattle, but south of Everett, Washington, here in Washington State in the great Pacific Northwest of the U.S. You can see all the fir trees there on either side, and lots of RVs and other wreck vehicles sitting out the winter. So, taking off here. This was my first ever video taken on the bike, and I could not get the sound to work, which is why I'm having to do this voiceover that you hear. Also, for some reason, had the date code activated. It's not set and doesn't work, so that's inaccurate, but hopefully I can get that removed for you. But here I am, just heading through the neighborhood. I tend to take slow, windy, curvy roads rather than fast, straight roads for obvious reasons. So just trying to get the tires warmed up. This was a brisk day. It was sunny, beautiful, but the temps were in the 50s. So faster I go, the colder it gets. So I'm going by the school here and heading out of the neighborhood. So you can see the Super Hawk. It definitely has a lot of Ducati characteristics. They copied the white tack off the 916, among other things. This bike is quite civilized, and I've done things to make it a little more civilized, just for old fart riders such as myself. This bike has Healy bars on it, which race, which are about an inch or so higher than stock. I have Race Tech innards in the front forks, and I have a CBR shock on it. So it's the suspension's been upgraded. This bike, it's a shame there is no sound, because I really love the sound of this bike. I've got Two Brothers pipes on it right now. I have the silencer inserts on them, but they're still a bit on the loud side. I had Leo Vince pipes on it before, which had a nice bass note, but the cans rattled. Something awful when you decelerated. It was embarrassing. It's like someone playing maracas inside there. Castanets, actually. So hopefully no one can see the speedometer in there. Anyway, this is a typical town. Battling for my right of way against people who are willing to try and run night lights. Stay there, SUV, in order to just get through, cut me off. Careful, bike. All right. This is a typical neighborhood in Washington State. Lots of frame houses. Wood is cheap and plentiful here, obviously. Dodging the manhole covers. Anyway, I've always loved Ducatis. Beautiful bikes. Well made. Oh, the neighbors are home. But they're expensive and fussy to maintain. Oh, checking my gloves. And I was really delighted when in the 90s Honda came out with the Super Hawk, because it was definitely an inexpensive entry to a very Ducati-like experience. You had a 100 horsepower V-twin, essentially what Ducati calls an L-twin. They're 90 degrees apart, these cylinders, and this gives you a primary smoothness. The bikes don't vibrate as violently like most parallel twins do, or did back in the day. They've engineered them much smoother. Lately, the new Triumphs are quite nice. This bike is very smooth, has very little vibration. What little there is corrected by the bar end weights on the bike. You notice the mirrors are quite short, though. Basically, when I ride, I'm looking at my arms the whole time, as you can see. Okay, oops, cut the line. There we go. Hopefully I can get by this van. And he's accelerating a bit. Come on. Okay, there we go. So I'm heading out to Highway 9 here, which will get me south to Woodinville and then over to Redmond. This is my usual way to head away from Seattle Everett and the Interstate 5 corridor with all of its congestion and get into a less crowded area of the state where hopefully I can enjoy a curvy road or two. For the moment, it's just puttering along in traffic, though. I tend to enjoy sport touring rides. I've ridden this bike down to Mount Rainier several times. Almost made it all the way to Mount St. Helens. Ran out of daylight. Have taken it up to Mount Baker, up to Artist Point there on a very tight, twisty road. I've also taken it across the mountains and camped on the other side. So it's when I ride it, I like to ride it for a long time. But you got to keep the engine running and happy during the winter. So I will often take it out on cold days just to keep it warm, keep the engine limber. We'll see if I can get past this knot of traffic here. Anyway, I'm going down to this Ducati Open House. They had the V4 introduction, and I did get to see the V4. I also got to ride the Super Sport Ducati, which I hope to have in another video. And it was surprising how similar it was to my bike in terms of comfort and civility. I mean, this is a Honda, so the seat on it is quite nice. I've ridden this bike for hours on end. Actually, you can't ride this bike for longer than about 100 miles before you empty the tank and have to get a fill up. So that kind of limits your seat time. So it's interesting when you, when you do any kind of touring, you're basically plotting your route from one gas station to the next, which makes trips across the mountains there's a bit of anxiety there as I make sure to fill up at the last chance gas and then fill up again the minute I get over the mountains. There's a red light that'll come on when you're at when you have less than a gallon left. So I always try and fill up once I see the red light of death. So we're heading out here, finally past most of the suburbs. Oh yeah, there's one more intersection here into the newest suburb. These things pop up all over. We're rapidly losing any bit of woods we used to enjoy. Now, I don't know if we'll see any mountains from this point of view. There's just too many trees in the way. But there is a whole line of mountains to the east of us here. This is the direction we're currently heading. And around this corner is Highway 9. Heading over because I'll need to make a right turn. My basic philosophy when I ride is get away from the cars. Try and find an open space and maintain a speed that keeps me in that unpopulated space. Whether it is going a bit faster than the limit or not, I still feel it's best for my safety to avoid riding around a lot of cars. Okay, this is Highway 9. Kind of a slow corner there. Still not sure. This was a nice day, but During the winter, you never know what you're going to hit on the roads. Could be an excess of sand, wet leaves, black ice, other hazards. So I tend to be a bit cautious until I know what's going on. So this is Highway 9. It's our second big north-south corridor in Snohomish County here. And I'm not going terribly fast just because there are speed traps along here. And as you can see, there's houses on either side that people can pull out of. So you got to keep your eyes open. So I really like my Super Hawk. It's a fun bike. It's got a lot of torque. I've pretty much tuned it for torque. And so basically, I rarely wind it out. I find most traffic situations can be dealt with quite easily by just snapping open the throttle and vroom, you're around somebody in a fairly short time. And it makes a marvelous sound when it's passing cars. Sounds like a Stuka in full dive bomb mode. Another bike there. Can't see it, but I'm doing the two-finger wave, stay on two wave with my left hand there. Okay, another shopping center, crawling by here. So much excitement. Yes. See other people's videos, and these semi-rural commercial areas all look the same, it seems. I'm sure eventually there'll be whoa, what is that? Was a Bentley. You don't see many Bentleys about. Kind of interesting bike here. I'm trying to get the face shield up. It tends to fog, especially with this cold air rushing over it. I do have, I don't know, it's not a pin lock, but there is a setting on the visor that'll leave it cracked open about a ½ inch. Keeps the shield from fogging. There, I shut it again, but it does make a hell of a lot of wind noise. I'm still working out the microphone situation, get some listenable audio from the helmet mic. So basically we have two trucks here doing the mobile roadblock thing. And yeah, we'll head behind the Bentley here for a while. See if we can get around Mr. White Truck here. As long as he doesn't have the same idea passing the guy in front of him. So looks like I try not to be too obnoxious a rider, So if I'm gonna pass somebody, I like to have a fair amount of room so they don't feel like I'm stepping on their toes or invading their personal spot. We tend to be rather defensive about our lanes here in the States. A lot of road rage and arguments, sometimes gunfire. So you got to respect people's personal space there, their personal bubble. Yeah, I got to watch out right around here. I've seen a speed trap. So I'm going to slow down again here, I think. You notice I'm cruising fairly low. I like to lug the bike. I like the sound the twin makes in the lower revs rather than winding it out all the time. Does have, I believe, a 9 grand red line. Power comes on at like 4 or 5, but it'll pull strong from 2500. So just about into Woodinville. And the camera is going to switch to the next file here in a second. Hopefully it won't make too big a glitch. But coming up on a intersection here, there'll be an overpass where we go over a highway. It goes southwest down into Seattle. We're going to skirt that, go over into Redmond into Woodinville proper, and then notice I've left the turn signal on, probably for miles. And the traffic backs up again. This was actually a fairly light traffic day. I've seen much worse than this. Still haven't noticed that turn signal. Hopefully I can block that out so no one will ever know. I'm going to come up with some excuse now, like the camera was blocking my view of it, couldn't see it. This is a chin mount hookup I've got on the camera. And this light is the turn to go to Seattle. Woodinville's was a mill town. Which now has kind of gone upscale, and it's oddly now home to the Chateau Saint Michel winery and also the Red Hook brewery, as well as I've seen a small distillery or two in town. So they're a big spot for the wine and spirits industry here in Washington. We grow a lot of grapes in central Washington. The dry desert lands there are irrigated by water pump from the Columbia River, flows through it, and it feeds a lot of local wineries. So stuck in traffic here. So exciting. Looks like I got that turn signal finally. Really like the Honda. It's very well mannered for a big V twin. Doesn't stall at lights much. There's a pair of scoops in the front fairing that direct cool air back at you, so the heat from the engine isn't a worry. That's one thing I did encounter riding the Super Sport, is the engine heat just comes right up at you. And my right leg got pretty hot on the ride. Okay, so now we're over the highway heading into Woodinville here. I think that's a Home Depot or something on the right. Costco. Okay. Bulk discount merchant. And And this is just a small, this is a highway. It's a Highway 202, I believe. And I'm going to lose it up here. And then reacquire it. I know it heads southeast out of town, but in the process, it actually heads west through town to the west side of town, and then down around the perimeter of town to the south, and then finally southeast. Very roundabout, kind of a typical Washington road that way. Checking speed. So you can see it's kind of an industrial spot here. This is the outskirts of town. There used to be a lot of auto salvage yards here. I can remember getting a turn signal stock for a Honda CRX at one. And eventually there's a Honda dealer up here. They also have Aprilia. Thought about going there for a test ride.